Today I was glad to meet Mr. Hum, a former restaurant worker, one of the Lorac Hill, who knew my father. Do you remember any stories about my father?
A little bit,
Yeah.
Not exactly very much, you see. But we had to work together quite a long time.
At Jordan Gongsan?
Yeah.
But before that, did you know him socially? Did you...
Your father, no gambling, nothing at all. He's a good man. Save money.
Memories are fading, but also the long hours of work and the social isolation of these men must have made it very difficult for them to get to know each other well. Since my father worked in the laundry, naturally, that's my next step. But I soon discovered many of the laundrymen who knew him during the 1920s, the 30s, and the 40s have passed away. Mr. Chin and his wife run one of the last hand laundries in Montreal. He only came to Canada in the 1950s. His father, like mine, was a head taxpayer and worked in the laundry. After working briefly in Vancouver, my grandfather came to Montreal. He opened a laundry in the East End. When my father arrived in 1921, he got a job as a houseboy. Then he went to work in my grandfather's laundry. They worked together until the 1950s, 6 days a week, 16 hours a day, to pay off the head tax debt and to have enough money to send back to the family. You didn't need much capital to start a laundry, just hard work and the ability to swallow your pride. What little money was needed could be borrowed from the family association. Montreal was the Chinese laundry capital of Canada, with over 400 laundries at one time. Mr. Yi Ao worked in one of these laundries for many years.
$2 a day. Yeah, work a long time ago. About 1 to 2 hours every night. Then sleeping, no good bed, sleep. You see, home this song is meant to away from guy. No gun for.
I met Mr. Yi in the Montreal Chinese Hospital. He arrived in Canada in 1910 at the age of 20. My father helped Mr. Yi write letters home to China. Although he is over 100, he still remembers what paying the head tax meant to him.
You on tiền những anh đời lực can ai cái điều cái anh vận dài nhiều dân nó đâu mù thiên à can phu mà nên chỉ cái chiều hôm miệng xì nòng nè 弄呢要成得解呢，呢就活樣啊！只有個個呢唔准呢嚴啊，唔准弄嘅啦，開氣啊唔准啊，嘛弄嘅甩擦嘅喎，連大改來在，就聽翻紅山跟老豆無天，係啦嘛，個個念憶界呢。看紅嘅呢，個個我知係嘛，咪就看聽，唔係就個咁落灰燒氣，表示紅嘅，嗱所以我哋好唔歡嘅，啊。
嗰陣時呢，白銀可以賣兩緊，當然係唔公平嘅。除咗我哋中國人之外呢，當然要額外扣稅嘅。
The railway is at the heart of Canada's history. The men who built the CPR from the Rockies to the Pacific Ocean were Chinese. They earned 1/3 the wages of the white workers. But once they completed the railway, they were no longer wanted. The head tax was imposed to keep them out of Canada. It began at $50, then raised to $100, and finally $500. The government collected millions, almost enough to cover the $25 million it gave the CPR. Still, the unions, the churches, the politicians, all agitated for Chinese exclusion. I can picture my father taking the train across Canada on his trips back to China. I look for the sites of the Chinese railway camps, the steel tracks they laid, the tunnels they blasted through the mountains. What do I hope to find among the long-lost spirits of the Chinese railway workers? 17,000 Chinese came to build the CPR. Up to 1,500 died in the process. Legend has it, one Chinese worker is buried under each mile of track through the Fraser Canyon.
This is the last train ever. Next week, I must leave by Greyhound. Not that I care. The CPR is not my father. Tracks clicked as I watched the disappearing moon flashing, as signals do before a change of rails. The cool breeze whips by, and every mile I see Chinese workers hitching girders, sometimes solitary, sometimes blood splattered, sweating and singing, while the moon shines a spotlight on them.
A few years ago, when I was looking for a job, I thought it would be nice to get a job with the railway. So I wrote a letter to CP, Canadian Pacific. What I said in this letter was, since my ancestors helped build the CPR out west, I'd like to keep up the tradition by offering my services to you. As it turns out, he invited me in for an interview, gave me a 50-question psychological test, And I was never called back for a second interview, so maybe I flunked my psychological test. Anyway, after that, I decided to get a job with CN, and this is where I am, the People's Railway. Well, I think my father would be quite proud of the fact that I'm an engineer today, and probably working with the railway, because he always thought the railway, because of the whole mystique of the CP, to be a very important aspect of Canadian industry. And so I think he was quite interested in the railway.
Boat Chong sailed away on a liner Sakoshe to his home port far away. He said, when I come back, I bring ye bride. You see a China maiden by my side. Ali knows she wait for he every day so patiently. Chong, he come from Hong Kong, where Chinese man play holiday on a drum. Chong, no likey that song, where Chinese man cry way up I sing. Sangay, mangay, chicka licka fungay. Chong, go back to Hong Kong. I betcha he teach his China girl how to dance like in a trance. Teachy peachy American song all day long to his China girl in old Hong Kong.
The head tax was not enough. In 1923, Canada shut its doors to all further Chinese immigrants, claiming they could never assimilate into Canadian society. The Chinese Exclusion Act would last 24 years, and its effects would be even more devastating than a head tax. The community could not develop normally. It was full of married bachelors. Many men led lonely, isolated lives. Chinatown started to die. Thousands of men, like James Wing, as well as my father and grandfather, were stranded here without any chance to bring their families.
I feel very bad naturally to leave the wife, but all the Chinese came here with the future, hope of the future. There's employment here, a chance to make a living. In China, it's difficult. So I didn't regret it to come. The only thing is that, well, I have to be just like the older Chinese. I would come to Canada. Maybe after 10 or 15 years, then I would have a chance to go back to see my family. But
how did your wife feel? Did she understand why this was happening to her?
oh, she prepared all the Chinese around my area, overseas Chinese. They all the women had to go through the same kind of life. So she not surprised. She prepared for that.
After the marriage, men like James and Yi Ao had to come back to Canada within 2 years, or they would lose the right to return. My parents married when my father went back to China in 1923. With the passing of the Exclusion Act that year, my father could not bring my mother back to Canada with him.
於歸夫出外，有口實難開。遨遊異國幾時回？父卻風流經數載。春生灰，家貧無可奈。寄與同群諸姊妹，出洋子弟勿相配。
For the next 33 years, my mother saw my father only 3 times, whenever he could save the money for a visit home. My mother knew of his life in Canada almost entirely from the letters he sent.
我就記得就時記得日本對淪陷時佢就相片去愛，即係話難免你有佢咯，我哋時時個諗得啦，邊點未出世咯，但我都依個對咯，我難免你有佢咯，到日本對咯，我記得佢話，佢咪話佢เป็นของนี้พ่อชื่อผู้แล้วที่เราไอ้สู้เทมพอยแล้วแม่ก็อย่างพ่อสุหันไม้ก็อย่างทุกแล้ว cái con lão em sáng lắm, cái thằng lão giàu sáng lắm, cái chồng nhà em có bé vui lắm, cắm eo lộc eo nịnh nó cái tôi vui này con lắm, vui này cái đi mọi gì khỏi lắm.
Other regulations followed the Exclusion Act. Chinese were prevented from being citizens. They were denied the right to vote and to join the professions. There were more laws against the Chinese in Canada than any other minority. The Chinese helped build the railway. They helped build this country, but they were not white. The age-old arguments opposing non-white immigration were used against them. Job stealers, people who could not fit in. Still, the Chinese stayed for the same reasons that all immigrants stayed. My father and grandfather made a living here, and they were not going to be pushed out.
From the past experience, we only view Canada. It's not a country called my own. It's a country just so a kind of temporary employer rather than a country of my own.
That was because of the Exclusion Act.
They exclude the Chinese from having a family, and we were not welcome and discriminated. So no sense to claim it's your country and your home. No business will employ a Chinese. See, they don't want to employ you. They look down on you. Another thing is that marriage. Nobody would think to marry Chinese or Chinese think of marry the Canadian, except your own race. We never think of fighting back or fighting for right because why? Because we knew it would be impossible to win or to get in ahead. So just simply totally accept it and work silently to the best to advantage, that's all. So we didn't have any trying to have a legal battle or trying to criticize the society. We simply accept all those things. Just fate.
How am I feeling? Drinking alone with no sweetheart of my own. Well, frankly, I'm a bit stoned, yes I am. I play a little poker, hey, maybe some dice. Bartender, give me another whiskey and ice. You know, a woman around here sure would be nice, oh yes. This kind of living, well, it ain't no kind of life. Pushing an iron or a carving knife. Man, I sure would like to see my wife.
World War II was a turning point for the Chinese in Canada. Many Chinese Canadians volunteered to fight for this country. In Vancouver, I met war veterans Ken Lee and George Marr.
We volunteered as a group being attached to the British because they wanted people like us to operate behind the lines because we could speak Chinese and we looked the part, you know, like natives. We could blend into the background. The reason I joined up was because a lot of my friends were being called up. The ones that were called up, they were born here. I don't know of anybody that was not a Canadian that didn't get called up.
Well, they were conscriptists, don't you remember?
Yeah.
And we said, why should we fight for this country when we have no rights?
Yeah.
And so they said that we would fight for the country, they would right all these wrongs.
Yeah.
Which they did.
Yeah.
1947.
Yeah.
Ken arrived in Canada at the age of 6 in